600,000 Russian soldiers were killed and injured. And on the other hand, on the part of Ukrainians, is 400,000. Who's giving this information to him, and why is that so exaggerated on the part of Russians?
Well, I mean, clearly he's getting his advice from his national security team. Now, I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard is involved in this at all, but Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, Keith Kellogg, these are people who buy into the exaggerations of the anti-Russia crowd, and there are gross exaggerations out there. He has to do better. Donald Trump has to do better. But I'll tell you why. Because first of all, and I learned this the hard way when I was dealing with Iraqi government officials as a weapons inspector. We received all sorts of intelligence from around the world about Iraqi capabilities, and about 90% of it was just wrong, dead wrong. But if I sat down with the Iraqis and started spouting out numbers, just throwing them out there that were wrong, they just would look at it and they'd lose all respect for you because they realize that you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about, which means you can be fooled. You can be, they can sit there and blow smoke at you because you'll go chasing just about anything. I made sure that look, there was times, of course, I went out there and said things and they're like, come on, Scott, you can do better. You're better than this. We know you're better than this. But generally speaking, when I sat down with them, I had done my homework. I had ground it down. And when I hit them with facts. And you could just see in their face, they're like, oh, damn it, he's onto us. And then it's just a long, drawn out battle to get to the truth. And then you get to the truth. But you have to sit down with the facts. And when you hit them with the facts and they know that you know what you're talking about, that you have a solid background in what you're talking about, there's nothing they can do. It's a losing battle for them. And Trump needs to understand if he's going to sit down opposite Vladimir Putin, he better have the facts, not speculation, not politicized information, the hard ass facts, or don't open your mouth. If you don't have the facts, shut up. Don't say anything. Let the other side commit. And then if they're committing to a lie, then attack. I always found that to be the best approach, is let the other side commit to a story, to a narrative, and then I can take that back and take it apart. And then come back and hit them with things that showed how bad it is. But if I commit to a narrative that's not 100% correct, that's wildly speculative in nature, they just look at it and say, you don't know what you're talking about. And we're not here to educate you. This is supposed to be a negotiation. And if you're telling me you're coming into a negotiation ignorant as the day is long, then we're just going to try and use this negotiation to get to our advantage. And that's not how we get out of this thing. So Trump has to do a better job before opening his mouth. But unfortunately, he's shown himself susceptible to saying the last thing that somebody whispers into his ear. He needs better advisors, especially on Russia. He needs much better advisors than the one he has today.
Do you think that what the Biden administration right now is trying to do, considering the conflict in Ukraine, would benefit Donald Trump? Because with the new aids to Ukraine, and Donald Trump in his last interview with the press, he said that they were not informed him before letting Ukrainians attacking Russia using ATACMS. And if that was the case, does the new administration have any sort of leverage on the Biden administration? Because they're getting, by January 20th, they're going to be in Washington, and they have to manage the situation. There has to be some sort of connection between the two administrations. It seems that wasn't the case so far.
Well, it doesn't have to be. There should be, cooperation and all that, especially in a situation where we have a divergence. Again, going back in history, at the end of the administration of George W. Bush, the START treaty was setting to expire, and there was a need for an extension of the treaty, et cetera. And the Bush administration had a negotiation position that was not compatible with the vision of the incoming Obama administration. And so what the Bush administration did is say, well, we lost the election, and they have something, so we're going to stop and just call pause, and they're going to pick it up when they come in, and they got it. They got the ball. We're not going to do anything more. And that's what should be done here. The best, what Biden should have done is said that we're going to stay the course in terms of what we've already committed to prior to the election, but there will be no expansion of aid. There will be no change in the guidance in place because we have a new administration coming in, and they're going to be in charge on January 12th. But instead, what Biden has sought to do is what they call Trump-proofing this policy, and that means to create a situation that's so catastrophically complicated that Trump can't change course. And one of the things that, as I said earlier, the Biden administration appears to be willing to take this up to a limited nuclear war. Now, there's no such thing as a limited nuclear war, and of course, it'll lead to a general exchange of nuclear weapons, and we'll all die. But the idiots in the White House right now think that they can fight a limited nuclear exchange with Russia and prevail, and that this would, trap the Trump administration. I wish they would listen to the words of Thomas Buchanan, who, in that same presentation to the Center for Strategic International Studies, said that while the United States would seek to prevail, what that meant in reality hasn't been explained to the American people, and that if the American people understood what winning a nuclear war means, it would mean that all life as we know it stops. If you live, you will live in a world that is completely different than the world that exists today. That nuclear war doesn't continue the American way of life; it ends the American way of life. And yet the American people are ignorant. He said maybe it's time for the government to be more honest with the American people about what they're getting ready to do. It doesn't matter because, again, they think they're going to win a nuclear war. They're not, and we'll all die, so it won't matter. But my point is the Biden administration is not making any effort to allow for a smooth transition. And so, it means that Trump is going to inherit a situation that's already complicated and it's going to be much worse. Now, Trump can simplify this because what the Biden administration is trying to do is tie Trump, to NATO and Ukraine. And the quickest way to stop that is not to play that game and just say on day one, I'm delinking from Ukraine altogether. We're not going to support you ever again. You're done. You're finished. No ifs, ands, or buts. And NATO, don't mess with us here because I'll just pull out. I'll terminate my relationship with you in a heartbeat. Shut up, sit down, don't say anything while we do this. I don't want to hear from you. That's what he should do. That way, all of this Trump proofing is irrelevant because Trump proofing implies that Trump's going to come in and be trapped by the policies and the precedents. And Trump can just simply unplug from that. But to do that, Trump would have to be willing to accept a decisive Russian victory in Ukraine, a victory that's defined by Russian terms. And right now, Trump doesn't seem to be willing or able to embrace that, at least not by the things that he said. But he has done some important things. The immediate trigger for nuclear war is the use of ATACMS missiles. And Trump has said some very important things. He said it in his Time magazine interview. And he said it in his most recent press conference that he doesn't support this. It's bad policy. It'll probably change under his administration. So that's at least a positive.
Yeah, in this press conference, he said that he's not interested in the conflict in Ukraine. He wants to put an end to the conflict as soon as possible. Here comes the question. With the administration that he has chosen so far, are they going to follow his policy, or they're going to do the same thing that they've done towards Syria and the policy in Syria in his first term? Do you see any sort of potential for going in that direction?
In what direction?
In the direction that we've seen during his first term, in terms of he wanted to withdraw the troops from Syria, and his administration wasn't following his policies.
I think the situation right now, post fall of Assad, actually begged for the withdrawal of American troops. That this is a problem that America doesn't want to be involved in. This is a problem between Turkey, Iran, Iraq. I think Russia is disengaging. But this American troops, if he wants to avoid a war, then he needs to get out of a region that just basically unloaded a whole bunch of gunpowder and everybody's playing with matches. There's nothing to be gained here. The American troops in Syria were there to facilitate the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's regime. That now has happened. Whether they played a role in it or not doesn't matter. That mission is gone. They can call it the counter-ISIS mission, but that's stupid. ISIS just won. We got head choppers in Damascus. Al-Qaeda, reformed Al-Qaeda. Jolani went and served under al-Baghdadi in ISIS. I mean, so come on, this is stupidity in the extreme. I mean, Donald Trump, if you want to be a man of your word and say that ISIS would defeat, then you have to start bombing Damascus. Keep American troops, reinforce them. Now you have to overthrow Al-Qaeda in Damascus if you're a man of your word. But he's not. He doesn't understand anything that he talks about in the region. And to be honest, it's other people's responsibility to get rid of Al-Qaeda. It's tragic what's happening in Syria today, but this is not a problem for America to solve. This is a problem for Turkey to resolve. Israel, emboldened as it is, the United States needs to just get out of the region and let the region, deal with this issue. All we do is complicate things, and unless we're going to go in decisively. Again, I mean, I'm not in favor of it, but one could articulate that this is a strategic defeat for the United States. Al-Qaeda raising the black flag of Islam over Damascus, and that it's imperative for the United States to come in and annihilate this. And maybe we can make common cause with Israel, since that's what everybody wants to do, apparently. So we can have that famous Israeli-American war against the regime, and then come in and cleanse Syria of this problematic element, and create a secular system. Wait a minute, we had that with Bashar al-Assad, but that's okay. We want to get rid of him. But what do we? Who knows? Now he's talking big about Iran. I don't think he knows what he wants. I don't think he understands the region. In the correlation between application of military power and effective diplomacy. If his focus is Iran and getting what he had called a better deal with the Iranians about their nuclear program, then getting American troops out of Syria and Iraq is a good thing. That would be something that needs to be done and should be done as a measure of good faith. Because if there is going to be a conflict with Iran, those troops don't add anything. They become problematic because now they just become targets for Iran. There's not enough of them. They're not of the right quality and quantity to intervene militarily. Any conflict with Iran will be strategic based, possibly and probably using nuclear weapons. So, you need to get those troops out. But I think as a good faith measure, leave and then tell Iran, look, we are willing to not cede in terms of surrender, but we recognize that you have legitimate spheres of influence and interest, and we're willing to let you sort that out with your neighbors peacefully. But you can't do that with a nuclear weapons capability. And right now, frankly speaking, listening to the rhetoric of your senior leadership, you're about a week and a half away from having a nuclear bomb, and that's just not going to happen. So we can do this the easy way, which is let's go back to the JCPOA and take it further. No sunset clause, permanent limits on your ability to enrich, but in exchange, lifting of sanctions and all this kind of stuff. And that's the deal Trump wants to make. He desperately wants to make that. Or in lieu of that, we bomb the totality of your nuclear infrastructure together with Israel. But understand that when we do so, A, we're going to use nuclear weapons, and B, it's going to be regime change. That when we come in, we're going to remove the regime from power. You will not survive this. It will be all over for you. And I think that's the direction he's heading right now with Iran. But American troops, they play, especially the troops in Syria and Iraq, this anti-ISIS mission. Stop calling it that, because it's absurd to say you're on an anti-ISIS mission when ISIS is in control of Damascus. But we'll see. Again, Trump has the potential of, securing two really big diplomatic victories, either one of which could earn him the Nobel Peace Prize. One of them is bringing into the conflict in Ukraine. The other one is solving the Iranian nuclear issue. If he does that, that'll be something that nobody else in the Western world was capable of doing. He did this, but he has to stop listening to stupid people. He needs better advisors on Russia and Iran in order to pull this thing off. And he has to be careful about the muscle card too much. Russia is just not going to work. And with Iran, they're a very proud nation. And right now there's a political fight going on inside Iran, the president and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And what he needs to do is, if he wants this deal, he needs to do everything to strengthen the hand of the president of Iran. You don't do that by blustering destruction. You do that by being genuine about what you're offering troops out, about the lifting of sanctions, and the formal termination of any policy of regime change that the United States, whatever covert policies we've had, we don't have anymore. In fact, we will stop all this to anti-regime forces. These sort of things could all be put on the table that could induce Iran to give up this nuclear program. Because I think increasingly in Iran, they're seeing this as something that could cause them to be run. This nuclear program is not giving what they wanted. Are they, especially the way it is right now, because the United States, nobody's going to accept Iran on the cusp of being a nuclear state. You either have to reverse that, or Iran has to take the step and become a nuclear weapon state, and then say, now we do. And I think the answer to what happens is the United States will do hard. I mean, it's what the United States, Trump already built a plan when he was president last time. He built the nuclear plan in the United States, in large part influenced by what a nuclear strike would be. So we already have a war plan against Iran that we're ready to implement. So if I were the Iranians, I would opt for survival, and I would opt for finding an equitable way not to put your entire national existence, not to predicate that on the continued existence of this new program. The program got them to where they are now, which is not a bad place, but it served its function. Iran doesn't need these centrifuges anymore to define what they are as a nation. Iran's pit, to economic, the economic salvation of their country, and that's not going to come in the form of a centrifuge.
I don't see any sort of disagreement, considering both Iranian and Russian government, to talk with Washington. But do you see any sort of willingness on the part of Washington to talk with them? Let's talk about this conflict in Ukraine. Do you think that these people are going to work with Donald Trump to facilitate his path toward any sort of agreement between the United States and Russia?
Well, he relies upon the establishment, not just no. If he relies upon people that he's put in around him, the answer is probably no. I think that he's going to rely on himself. I think I can pretty much guarantee the following: the only person meeting with Vladimir Putin is Donald Trump. Ain't nobody else meeting with Vladimir Putin. He's not going to share that stage with anybody. And he believes that that's a meeting that has to take place to bring this thing to an end. And look, Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un. Something that everybody said was unprecedented. I think Donald Trump would meet with the Iranian president. And I don't know if the Supreme Leader would meet with him, but I do believe that a meeting with the Iranian president is a real possibility to bring. So Donald Trump's not going to, with things of this scale, he's not interested to Marco Rubio and others. He's going to do it himself. And that's the strength of Donald Trump, because the establishment would never allow any of this to happen. The establishment exists for war, not peaceful outcomes. And Donald Trump is the anti-establishment guy. So the potential is there. Whether he will is another question, but the potential is definitely there. This Donald Trump-centric diplomacy is the chance we have for peace in Ukraine and Iran. But he can also blow it, because he has, when you have a keystone, a cornerstone mantra of peace through strength. What's the strength mean? Are you coming in threatening Vladimir Putin? And the Iranians aren't going to threat. What we respond to is the potential of maintaining their interests and getting on the path of economic salvation. I mean, that's what the regime needs more than anything. If you can improve the economy of the Iranian strength, what you'll find is the next agency, you'll get greater participation as people start to say, okay, this is a government is responsive to our needs, is doing what we need, et cetera, and so we're going to participate in forming this government. And I impose this, but I just think his instincts sometimes, he's an insecure man, and he needs therefore to power from a position of strength. Doesn't come naturally to him, especially with Putin. He's going to have to manage that one very carefully. But the issue for him is that the Russians understand more about Donald Trump than Donald Trump does, I think, and they will do the best to make sure that any meeting between the presidents has the potential of going well. Whereas the Iranians, I think, will be very guarded, and a lot of that meeting will depend upon what Trump is able to bring to the table and articulate. I don't think the Iranians are going to be leaning too forward, because there's political constraints. You can't be accused of caving into the devil. And right now, America is still very much the devil in Iran for just cause. And so Trump's going to have to be a little bit more proactive and a little bit more charismatic, I think, to pull that one off. But I think the Russians will do their best to help Trump succeed. And with Iran, it's going to really require Donald Trump to overcome the tendency to threaten Iran when you get Iranian